Welcome to Not Nosy, Just Curious. Thank you for doing this with me. And I want you to tell us a little bit about what you do. I find it so fascinating. I got questions. Go.
Okay. Well, this topic for today we were going to talk about is movement intelligence. So, movement intelligence is really it's known as a somatic type of work where it's about experiencing, and we're working with the body to change the mind, basically. But it's about experiencing.
Now, when you say,
Um,
let me just interject
mhm,
a minute, Lynn, for clarity. When you say movement intelligence, are you
mhm.
talking two words, movement and then intelligence, or the movement itself is intelligent?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. It is two words.
Okay.
But we're talking about the body's ability to, that we have this intelligence inside in ourselves. And what happens is as we grow and older, we start to form habits that maybe aren't so useful for us. But the body has, it's in our DNA, right? The
Mhm.
body has this ability to move in certain ways and do things. So, what we're doing in movement intelligence is we're going back and finding that intelligence that's in the body. Um, and we're trying to bring that out again because as we go through life, we form patterns that aren't so useful. Even do have habits that, or we can even call them addictions. Habits are addictions that we don't even realize that we're doing, but over time, we're causing this wear and tear on
Mhm.
the body. But also, it relates to how we think too. So, how we move has a lot to do with how we feel and how we think.
And when I talked to you the other day, because we spoke earlier,
Mhm.
it's not an exercise routine. It's not something that you have to do. It's not something that has to hurt. It's just something that you must feel internally. Am I right?
Right. I mean, it really is about awareness is where it starts. But and because we can only improve on things when we become consciously aware of what we're doing, which
Right.
isn't always so easy. And but what we help to find that, and we do this movement intelligence is we do this through, they're very gentle movements.
Yes.
They're but it doesn't mean it's necessarily easy. Like they're easy movements, but it doesn't mean that it's so simple. It's kind of complex, a lot of what's going on. We but it's very novel type movements, and these novel type movements that are safe wake up, activate ourselves, wake up the brain, maybe create new neural pathways to learning. And we can apply, these movements are like going, it's like you're a movement detective, right?
Mhm.
And if you're curious and you start to explore, what can I do to help myself move easier? What can I do to make this unusual weird movement that I'm doing feel more comfortable? And we're
So,
creating possibilities for ourselves to have different variations of different things that we can do within the movement.
so, do you think as a human nature, we complicate things that these movements we're going to think, oh, I should be meditating or I should be thinking about them more? Or is it something, is it a practice that comes fairly easy?
It's a different mindset. So it's a different to shift in a way of doing things because yes, we do tend to, and we always want to achieve something. We tend to, as humans, we go for the maximum all the time.
Mhm, mhm.
One of the principles of movement intelligence is to do 20% or less of effort. And this allows us to feel what we're doing and then also rebuild a different foundation for then we can do more on endurance and strengthening. But if your foundation isn't, if you're on a foundation that's maybe not so, let's just say balanced, um, then you're causing more wear and tear and
Now,
strain.
when did you become interested and how did you discover this
Hmm.
path?
Probably, I think in little bits of my life in the past, and I didn't realize what it was. Um, the work, I worked with somebody, hmm, I don't know, 15 years ago or so, who was a Feldenkrais practitioner. And also as a horse person, I went to her for help.
Now, let me ask Lynn for clarity. What does that mean, Feldenkrais practitioner?
Okay, so Moshe Feldenkrais, this work really is based on the work of Dr. Moshe Feldenkrais, which he was a scientist basically, and and also an athlete, and he does what's called awareness through movement, and so this was some time back, and so that's Moshe Feldenkrais as a person.
Okay. All
So, right. And with these principles of, again, less is more, and doing and finding variations. And you can even use your imagination to do all these options, finding the lots of possibilities for doing things. And then, okay, go ahead.
So when you first were introduced to this, were you immediately drawn to it, or did you have to be made a believer, or was it just the process of doing it over and over? I mean, what was your area of interest in this arena?
Yeah, for me, it didn't take any convincing, because I was a dancer in my first life. I've always been very physically active. And as I was working more in the corporate world, I was developing lots of pain, neck pain, back pain, knee pain, everything, and while I was still active, I was doing other more conventional modalities, but yet I was still in pain. Nothing was helping. So that was one of my motivators. So as I started doing, being introduced to the work, it really didn't take much. It wasn't any convincing for me. I found it to be fun also. I thought it was interesting, and not as boring as doing repetitive type of
So did
exercise.
You search this out, alternative methods to exercising, or did somebody introduce you to it? Or
Actually, yeah, a friend introduced me.
Oh, okay.
And it came to me in different places from a couple different friends. And in the end, I ended up going for a movement intelligence certification, which I can talk more about where that goes. But from a friend of mine in Australia, and we were starting to talk about the programs of movement intelligence and movement intelligence is an expansion, or you could, of the Feldenkrais work, where it builds on a little bit more being an uprightness, because a lot of the Feldenkrais work is done lying on the floor, where the movement intelligence, who was created by Ruthie Alon, who was one of Moshe Feldenkrais' early teachers. She just passed away a few years back at, almost 91. She became very interested in osteoporosis, the billions of dollars being spent, in hip fractures. She was also really intrigued by the African water carrier walkers and how they could carry these heavy loads, right, with up to a point, like 30-40% of their body weight, with without extra effort, because of how they aligned in how they walked.
That's interesting.
Yes. And yeah.
The movements, like I said before, the movements are very simple movements.
Yes, but they can frustrate people too sometimes, because they're so unusual. Sometimes people get a little bit.
That's a good point you make. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's different. That's the whole point, is you start to say, you get to know yourself a little bit and say, how do I respond when I don't understand something? Do I get frustrated, or do I say, hey, okay, what else can I do to make this easier? Or am I stuck in this habit that maybe I'm stuck there? Do I have to be? So you start to learn to ask questions of yourself. What can I do to make this movement more comfortable? What other parts of my body can I explore? Because really it is an integrative approach. We might say, hey, we're going to do something for the shoulder blades or the shoulder or the neck or whatever, but really it is about working with the whole team of parts in the body, the whole body, it's all integrated. It's all about whole body interaction.
So I noticed, Lynn, you never use the word exercise. So this is not to be confused with exercising. This is conscious movement.
Exactly. Yes, that's right.
Never ever to be confused with exercise. So if I'm overweight, can I expect results from this movement?
Oh, well, what it can help you to do is to do what you're already doing, but you'll do it better. So let's say you have some kind of an exercise regime, and instead of just pushing through it mindlessly,
Right.
you're learning how to work in more coordinated ways that can help you use all of yourself and make your workouts more efficient. That's just one example. Everything, but it really can apply to any sport or anything, and even walking. We have a whole program in walking better. We're using walking poles and emulating what quadrupeds do, and getting this movement in the rib cage and our shoulder blades, which we've forgotten as humans because we don't walk on our hands and anymore, right? We don't need it as much. We do things with our hands, but in the meantime, our ribs get very stuck, which then can cause we're overusing the neck, we're overusing the low back, right? So
big trade-offs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, do you have to do repetitions? When you show a movement, does it have to be a movement done in sets of 20? Can it be just a movement at your comfort level? If you feel and you've made the connection and you're aware of your movement, can you just do it on your own and maybe do 3 now and 3 later? Or does it have to be repetitions in big, long spurts?
No, yeah, it doesn't have to be in big, long spurts. As a matter of fact, that's one of the beauties of this. Like, once you know it, you can then do it in a shorter period of time. You don't have to spend a long time learning it. Sometimes it takes, we might go through an initial lesson to learn it, maybe a half hour to learn a process or a longer session. But once you know it, you just kind of go, oh, I'm going to do this movement. And then each time you go into it, you discover more. Maybe the first time you did it, you might say, well, I don't know, I kind of didn't get that, but that's okay. I feel different, but I'm not sure what,
Right. That's good. Yeah, that's a good point, because I imagine a lot of people might do that in the beginning and then not give it a fair chance.
Right. And then they try it again later on, like, wow, yeah, now I'm starting to feel something. Or maybe just one word comes up when they maybe rewatch a lesson, because I usually do have people record their lessons, and so they can come back to it. So yeah, you definitely, it is meant to be repeated, but not in the same way you say, okay, I'm going to repeat this process every single day and do it for this period of time. You do it as more as a playful type of thing. You do a movement till it's interesting. Okay. Or maybe as you're walking around doing your normal stuff, you might notice that or say, oh, let me play with that as I'm walking around. And you might say, oh, I feel more freedom, or I'm squatting better.
That's a good point. That's what I was going to ask you next. The freedom. So it doesn't have to be a very calculated movement. There's some freedoms to it until you until you're aware of the process, the movement, right?
And yes, and what can happen as you go through, and they're called processes. Exactly. You use the word processes, meaning that it's broken down. First, you do have to learn it in the first stage mechanically of what's happening, and then you can start to explore and feel where you feel it and what's going on. But the beauty of this, what I find really fun about it, is that suddenly you're doing something you do every day, and you're like, wow, I'm walking up my driveway better. Or I just squatted down and got up really easily, and I couldn't do that, a month ago or whatever. You start to notice these spontaneous changes, and I think that's the real beauty.
Now, do you ever stop learning, Lynn? Is there do you learn constantly new things or new certifications? Or, does it keep going and going and going? Or are you just learning how to adjust movements differently on your own?
Well, I think that, there are certifications you go through, but then the point is that you discover, especially when you're teaching, and working with different people, the way I feel a movement isn't going to be the same way somebody else feels a movement, right?
So you can't do the movement wrong.
I mean, not really. I mean, there's a certain configuration and we make adjustments. We can adjust with padding. We can adjust with doing it smaller. We can adjust with doing an imagination, or maybe we do something that's maybe more suited for that person at that point in time. But yeah, it is about, uh, it's like getting feedback. You try things and you get feedback. It's like, how did that work? And how did that work? You know, oh,
Mhm.
that didn't feel so great when I did that, you know, did
Right.
it that way. But these are all very small. Well,
And this
generally
movement
smaller
is
things.
never supposed to hurt.
Right. It's not about pain. We are not, never exactly. That is one thing that we aren't doing here is we're not pushing through pain.
Right.
Absolutely. If you're feeling that, then let's say that you say, oh, I'd like to work on this shoulder that this hurts. But if it's too painful to do something on that shoulder, well, then you work with the other side because the body does learn from the other side too.
No kidding.
Mhm.
So if the one side is painful and you start adjusting and leaning on the other side for more, for it to do more, the other side will learn from it. Do you
It
know what I'm
can,
trying to say? Sometimes your leg hurts, so you overwork the other leg to adjust for the pain in the one leg.
well, that's like, yeah, that's a compensating type of pattern that can
Right,
happen
right.
with
Yeah.
injury for sure.
Okay.
Um, but what's interesting about that, like what you can, like one strategy is called neurological diplomacy. And what you can do is you can actually imitate the disturbed movement
Uh-huh.
on with the good, say the quote unquote good side, the side that's more functional, and you can imitate that, the movement that's not so functional, and it can start to create changes too. The brain is quite amazing, but yes.
Wow, that's interesting.
So there's, yeah, that's definitely, that is a strategy we use. And but each process offers different strategies. So,
I think that's so interesting. Yeah. But I think, like I asked you before, Lynn, do you think people are going to try and like think too much? Like we have a problem, we just think too much. We overthink everything. I mean, how do you empty the brain to absorb what you're feeling?
just by paying attention, and yeah, that is depends on, if you're in a super stress situation in that moment. But yeah, by being in the moment, if you're worried about something that's going to happen in the future, you're not in the moment. And how can we get or something in the past, right? You're not in the moment. And when you're paying attention to, and this is what's so great about movement brings us into our body. And when we're in our body, we're present. We're not, when we're out here, we're not in our body. When we're back there in the past, we're not in our body. But when we're here, when we're doing something, feeling, sensing with all of our senses, whether it's sight, smell, movement, feeling, our sense, awareness of what's happening,
Yeah,
now we're in our body.
I think like what you showed me, I was so concerned about doing the movement right that I didn't allow for being aware of it. Do you know what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say? I was so concerned about making sure I had the movement right, but there is no right or wrong to the movement, right? It's whatever's comfortable for you as long as you're aware of the movement.
Right. And usually the first time that can happen too, right? First, you have to learn what are the mechanics of it, and be kind to yourself. Give yourself a chance to say, okay, this is it. And then when you come back to it another time, now that you kind of know it, now you can
Yeah.
dive in a little bit deeper. And
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think you're absolutely right. Because as I thought about it, it's been a couple days since we talked.
mhm.
I've been thinking about it a lot. And I thought, well, I didn't give it a real chance. Like Lynn was saying, where do you feel that? I felt it, but I wasn't really aware of it,
Mhm.
you know? So, yeah. And I think what you just said, be kind to yourself, be in the present. Why, Lynn, do we need permission to do that?
Yeah, well, it's just, I think a lot of how we're geared these days and how we're taught. That success is about, having these endless to-do lists, and
Yeah.
it's not, it doesn't have, it doesn't work.
Now, do you ever feel too busy to do your movements? I mean, are you ever, oh, I can't do it today. I'm way too busy.
I'm human too, right? I mean, right? And that's the beauty of it. But this is a tool that I have for myself that I know I've done enough of this kind of work that I can recognize the kind of energy that I need. Maybe I'm feeling chaotic or something. Well, what do I need? I need a little bit more organization. I need to bring more calm to myself. How can I do that? And so the more of these, the more you do of it and the different processes you learn, you go to something that can help to bring you into that place
So
and the type
it's a
of energy that you,
distraction.
pardon?
Is it a distraction? Because you do need to be present for it to be aware of it, right?
Is what a distraction.
The like when you say, "Oh, I'm busy doing, let me go do a movement." So you use it as a distraction also from all
No, I
the
wouldn't say that. I'm using it to help me get through something. Like
uh-huh.
I hate doing my taxes, right?
Right.
I have to go and it's like, I don't want to do this, right? So I have to put myself, I can do things to help myself get into a place of, because one of the things we really do is we chunk things down, right? A process is chunking things down. So when you get yourself into a movement where, again, you're chunking things down, it's going to help you get into that organizational mindset. And that's because that's what you're right. And now to go and dive into those details and just say, okay, one day at a time, and you learn to break down and do it in pieces that it becomes doable and achievable.
Okay.
And that's what we're doing in the movement. So we're taking this practice of going to the body as a laboratory and these practices, and then we can apply it, translate it into something else, whether it's learning something new, doing a task, or even playing, our sport or something that we like to do.
Now, when you do these exercise or not, when you do these movements, Lynn, do you have to have quiet? Do you like to have music? Do you like, I mean,
We generally don't use music generally because we want to be paying attention to what's happening. And yeah, it is, you also do want to take time for yourself when you're training in something. But then as you get better at something, you can learn to to deal with those distractions also, and then still do what you're doing. I mean, in working with, say, for instance, with working with horses, you really have to have that ability to not only be within yourself, but also be paying attention to the environment. And then you're dealing with another being that we're working with. So you really do, it is really it's not an exclusion of I'm just going into my own mind. But when you're practicing, you want to practice something, you want to practice in a way where you can do it. And then you can start, the better you get at it, you can start to apply it in these other ways where you can involve everything.
it sounds spiritual, like,
There is a spirituality
yeah,
to it, not a religious aspect.
no,
of
I
it,
don't
but
mean that
yeah.
in religious
Yeah.
arena. It just sounds very spiritual, kind of,
Yeah.
very calming, be with yourself, like you've said, be kind, It's such a learned behavior because we have gotten so busy.
Right.
Everything is so important. I'll tell you what, if I call you and you tell me you're busy, I don't want to hear it. We're all busy. You know what I mean? Don't use busy as
Yeah.
an,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I just, you said that word. I don't like it. But
It's about priorities.
we lean on the word busy like you're so important translates to busy, So yeah, you're not that busy.
It's
But
it's
anyhow,
priorities.
yeah, and it just sounds very calming and not like you said, not a religious spirituality, but very spiritual, very cleansing.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
know,
And there are some things we do because again, in that to that are a little bit more movement, and that we do some learn ways to build some strength, but we're doing it in ways that are building on a good foundation of movement, a distribution of effort that's safer.
right?
So that's one of the differences here.
So I don't need my gym clothes or my, water bottle or anything like that.
Yeah, just be comfortable.
Yes, I mean I could go outside and, like you said, be walking and do my movements.
Like we could do something in a chair right now, right?
All
What do you
right,
want to
let's do it then.
So yeah, so very simple. So for this process, then I thought I would take something where we can do something sitting in a chair, and you want a chair that is stable and not moving. Okay. And so this is just, we'll just do a short version of short process here. And one of the things, again, as humans, as I mentioned earlier, was alluding to, is that our rib cage, which is important, it houses organs and, you know, our lungs. And so, but I like the term rib basket, and other countries use the word rib basket, which has a little bit more of a, it's not so fixed, right?
Mhm.
And of course we need this, but again, as I mentioned, these areas, you know, are especially in the middle of our back, right? This can tend to be this tough nut to crack, as Ruthie would call it. This area where it's a tough area to unlock in us because of our habits over time. So I thought we could do something that was a little bit more for the shoulder blades, right?
Okay.
We forget that we have them. We're always so frontally
you're-
focused, you know.
We got shoulder blades. We got 2 right and left.
That's right. You know, so one of the things that we do first,
I'm going to name mine.
Huh?
Are you sitting? Are you sitting?
I am sitting.
Are you in a chair? Okay.
I'm in a chair that's doesn't have a
Because
back.
you know you're not real tall, so it looks like you're standing.
Oh no, I'm in a chair that has no back. So.
Okay. Oh, no back. I got a back on mine. Is that
That's
okay?
You won't be. You won't. You're just going to sit forward in
Yeah,
the
sitting.
So normally when we do a process, one of the first things we do is what's called a reference movement. It's like a measurement of, like, you're taking a before and after picture, really. It's a baseline,
Okay.
right? So we're going to do, and I'll turn around so you can see what I'm doing.
Okay.
And you're going to just take your one hand and you're going to just see how comfortable, like if you had an itch on your spine, you know, how comfortable are you to reach that hand up through the spine?
Okay.
And do that a couple times. And again, if it hurts, you know, do less. So just feel what that's like. How easy is it for you to reach behind yourself with that hand?
But Lynn, do I have to feel it? Do I have to, like you said, go to where it's uncomfortable, right?
No. You're just feeling, you want to feel to a point, like, what's it like for you? Is that uncomfortable? Can I even do that movement? Does it hurt someplace or not? You know, or maybe you're totally fine with that.
Okay.
So that's what we're exploring right now. What is it like for you to reach, you know, somewhere, reach up your spine here and notice, what does it feel like in your hand? You know, does something feel stuck there? Okay. And now do the other hand and check that and see does this hand maybe feel a little bit easier if you had to reach up and say you had an itch up there on your spine, you know, how easy?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, this one seems easier.
Which one?
What is this? My left.
Okay.
Is easier than my right.
Okay.
But you know what, Lynn?
I
am feeling it, like you said, in the shoulders. Am I supposed to be?
There's no rules. Again, where you feel it is where you feel it. Right now, for the reference movement, all you're doing is you're just noticing.
That's what I'm noticing.
Okay, and that's what you're noticing. So that could be something to pay attention to. And maybe the ease, how difficult or easy is it for you? You know, if you had to rate it, how easy or difficult is it for you to reach that arm back there? Right. What's your comfort level? You can assess your comfort level. So that's one way to look at it.
I think personally, women have an advantage with this movement because we have to, you know, hook our bras every day. So we're reaching back there a lot. Right? Are some of these movements easier for women than they are for men?
Well, you'll know if this is difficult, and it can become difficult for some people if there's an issue going on, for sure.
Oh, okay. No, I like this one.
Yeah. Okay. So what you're going to do is take the hand that you're going to work. Okay. So the hand that you want to improve, or the side that you felt could use improvement. Maybe there's one you want to improve on. Yes, exactly. Take that across. Exactly. And you have your collarbone here. So this is kind of like an experiential anatomy lesson, right? So you have your collarbone right here, and your fingers are just underneath this collarbone. And you're just resting your arm comfortably, your forearm comfortably. Okay. Your feet are flat on the floor and you are away from the back of your chair. Exactly. So you're kind of like a tripod sitting comfortably. Good. All right. So now you're going to take your other hand and just place it someplace on the forearm where you feel comfortable. Okay. And we're just going to very gently, you're going to give a little bit of gently, think of your elbow or just gently pulling a little bit to one direction and then coming back to straight or center. And do this several times. Exactly. So this hand, as you're doing, this is good. You're not sliding this top hand. We're moving the bone that's underneath the tissue. Right? So here we have a little bit of a spiral happening in the rib cage. Yeah. Everything's just moving as one. And just like you are too, I'll point out because you're doing that, your face is facing forward, just like you are. So a little bit of a rotation. And we're just guiding you're using this hand here to guide basically the chest, which is attached to the rib cage. Mm-hmm. And you might even try putting your hand under the elbow. So try a few different little positions here too, and just see.
So you can improvise. You can
right. Say what might feel like you don't have to buy at the first shop, right? You can just improvise, like use it a little bit, or try what's the most comfortable way for me to find the movement. And or does it give me a different sensation in this movement? So you can see here the movement is basically going to one side, but we can place our hand even in different places to get a different experience.
But I think with this...
Okay, let that go and rest a minute. So let's take a moment because this is about getting in the body. So let's just rest a minute. We'll go through the process and take a little breath and just sit and feel how your feet are on the floor. Notice your breathing. Breathing is the rib cage is really important for breath, right? Our ribs expand and close as we breathe. Okay, go ahead and place your hand up there again. And now this time, you're going to place your hand, say, somewhere on the upper arm here. So now let's go and find a way that's comfortable, right? So this little simple position might not be so easy, right? So again, we're going to do that. Now we're going to go a little in the opposite direction.
Push back.
Exactly. You're rotating in the other way. And as you're doing this, pay attention. You have shoulder blades behind you, right? And maybe is that shoulder blade going a little bit closer to the spine as you do that? Picture that triangular shaped shoulder blade. Is it going toward the spine or away? Just notice. And if you don't worry about knowing the answer. And you can probably even feel your tissue moving, right? So your body is a whole network of tissue, fascia, right? That's interconnected. When you affect one thing, you affect everything. Yeah, exactly. Maybe you can find another place, or maybe go lower down, like near the elbow again, like you were. That's it. And how are you breathing? Can you breathe with the movement? Maybe if you exhale when you move it backwards, and then inhale, and just letting it be natural. So when you breathe out, it goes a little back and in. Now reverse the breathing and see if it changes how you do it. So now breathe in when you move it back and see what happens. So you might even find that the way you breathe and use the breath can influence the movement. Now just do what comes natural to you when you're breathing and go ahead with the movement a couple more times. Really guiding the bones. The rib cage is rotating a little. And now take a little breath or take a little rest and just sit for a moment. Nice cleansing breath. Okay, just sit for a moment and just see if you even are aware. Maybe just this movement brought some awareness that you have shoulder blades back there. And maybe how are they hanging? How are they hanging on the spine?
Yeah, you're right. Made me aware of my shoulder blades.
Yeah.
Poor neglect.
And how are they hanging? How is it hanging on you? Like if you were just to sit for a moment and notice if it's different for sitting now. It could have even changed that.
I think it changed my posture a little bit.
Exactly. And now let's go back to that reference movement and see, okay, if I had to reach up here, pick an arm and just notice even if that changed for you.
That changed.
One arm at a time. Yeah. Did it become easier? Did something open up more for you?
Yeah, I like this one.
Yeah.
I like this one. Those are good, Lynn.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is, again, we do things too that are more active. We, in movement intelligence program, movement intelligence is it's like the umbrella, right? And then you have these different, you could say, knowledge areas under it. So we have Bones for Life, which was originally, where, again, a lot of people, we talk about building strong bone, and there's a lot going on about that now, but I'm not going to sit here and say that we're going to cure osteoporosis, but we do know that what bones do need is vibration and blood flow. But also we want to work on the coordination and a certain amount of flexibility and stability at the same time. What's the right amount? And that's what we learn to find. So in the Bones for Life program, then evolves into Walk for Life, which is there's some overlap, but it gets a little bit more into our walking and the coordination of that, which is something we do all the time. And everything in our evolution is based around this, right? And then also in the Solutions program, where we have these shorter type processes like we just did that you can do anytime. Once you know it. Yeah.
I like that. Okay, Lynn, let's wrap this up. Give me 3 important points.
About, okay, just in general, and this to remain curious. That's why it's so appropriate for you to, just to become curious in everything you do. And instead of maybe when you find yourself getting frustrated, say, what's another way I can do that? We all have some OSIS we have to deal with, but how can we deal with it in other ways? And the more choices we have, we can create more choices through creativity and being curious.
I am a big proponent of that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Execute differently. It's not one way is not the right way. So absolutely. I agree.
Right. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Amen to that. What else?
I really like to think of like the destination is not the destination is the journey.
Oh.
That where, it's about, people have goals, but it's getting there and how we get there. So we have flexible goals, maybe going from here to here. Well, maybe there's a straight line to it, but maybe that straight line's not going to happen, right? I mean, it's just like if you have bad weather, if you're traveling across the country, that you have to maybe take different routes to get to that place.
I like that the journey should be respected. You know what I mean? It wasn't just a straight line for the destination. Do you think, Lynn, is important to have goals or a destination? Do you think that's important?
I mean, this is just personal opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that we do need something we're working toward, but that may change. You might decide as you're learning more that maybe we don't want that particular thing anymore. Maybe it's not so helpful. So that's why, goals can change too, but we've gone through a discovery process to
it's like you said, the journey, because in the beginning, your path was very corporate, like you said, and then you discovered this journey, and this journey has been so fulfilling.
Yeah. And I really believe that, having this mindset, even in the corporate world, could have reduced my stress levels a lot more I would have realized either get out or learn something new from it or approach it differently, instead of thinking I was always doing something wrong, right? And that you learn to know yourself better, and you can still accomplish certain things, but there's different ways you can do it.
But with realistically, Lynn, was the corporate world really your path, or it was just what you did? You know what I mean? I certainly am not supposed to be doing what I'm doing because I'm not that social like that.
Right.
I mean, it's just a means to the end,
There were aspects of my work that I enjoyed. in the IT program and project management work.
Mhm.
There were definitely things about it that I liked. And a lot of these concepts can be incorporated into leadership, right?
Oh,
Let's think about it this way. If you are authentic, I know it sounds trite to say this, I mean, but if you are true to yourself, you, instead of trying to be somebody you're not, right? There's a whole different attitude to that. But when it's coming from the inside out, people recognize that.
oh yeah, I believe
And
that.
as a leader, it doesn't mean you have to be mean or bossy or whatever. People tend to, there's a difference between a manager and a leader, different roles. And we play all those roles, but you learn how to approach them in ways that work for you.
Well, I gotta say, just having these few lessons with you, I find you an amazing teacher. Did you ever think teaching was ever going to be that path for you?
I love teaching, and I think that I've always liked teaching, and I think I love educating animals, horses,
Mhm.
um, actually the horses, I learn a lot more from the horses probably than what I've tried to teach them, but it's reversed, and the more you get to know them, the more we learn from them, because we learn to pay attention, and that's why this work is so crucial. But so I've always enjoyed teaching, and in that process of watching something evolve and grow, and then and then when you do learn something, it's like, what does it mean to get there? I don't know what there is, because it's like mastery is something. There's always this fine line of mastery. When are you at master? You never feel like it, but you never feel like you're mastering something, but it's not a bad thing. That's what makes it fun.
Right, right. No, I thought you were very captivating. I mean, I was present. I was very present. I thought it was you're a great teacher. I just from knowing you all my life, I never saw you as a teacher. So this is all new for me, and you're good at it, really good at it. So
Thank
yeah,
you.
just
Thank
wanted
you.
to say that. Yeah. One more thing, Lynn, in conclusion, really come through here powerful. Right here at the end. Oh, you could tell me how nice my hair looks or something.
Well, you do. You always look so
Yeah.
beautiful and
Yeah, go on. All right, enough of that.
shining.
Okay.
Oh, one more thing, you mean? You
One more
want me to
thing. Yeah,
say?
one more. Make it, God, I wish I could remember what you said the other day.
Well,
The
I don't
simplicity
know, but just
of it.
be okay with not knowing all the answers right away. Let that be. You don't have
That'd
to.
be your curiosity.
Use your curiosity. So I think it does keep coming back down to curiosity. But be kind to yourself, respect yourself, and yeah, we spend so much time pushing through things to make them more difficult when we could be doing it so much
We
more
do.
easier.
We really do.
So
We
we
spend,
don't, 20% or less. That is an awesome principle. Do 20%. If you find yourself you're pushing so hard and it keeps backfiring on you, maybe do less.
that's good. I like it. All right, Lynn, will you do this again with me? And wait, before we close, if anybody is interested, come on, give a plug. Where can they find you?
Well, my email is right there on the name. They can reach out, lynn@ianahorse.com.
All right.
So that right there would allow them to email me directly. I do give lessons. I do a lot of private lessons. Actually, I work with people as equestrians. I work with them and their horses, and I also do movement lessons online, similar to what we just did here. And you don't need a great setup. You don't need a lot of room.
That's what
There's
I
certain
like.
things we need, but
Yeah.
it
You don't need a
changes
house.
lives.
Yeah, that's what I like about it so much.
Because when
And
you
I
change your attitude, it helps to change attitudes. And when we change our attitudes, we change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. I didn't make that up. It's an old saying, but it's a great saying.
no, and it's a practice. You have to learn to do that because we're
Yes.
in a very busy world and we make conclusions about people that we didn't even give them a chance. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's like,
Right. And as long as we have, when we're doing this kind of thing, keep it enjoyable. That's what makes us want to come back for more, and not repeating. Then
right.
you're
I
not learning anything.
Right. I like that.
Yeah.
All right. Will you do this again?
I suppose.
Will you? If I ask, is the answer going to be yes?
Yeah, maybe we can talk on a more specific topic now that we've done this intro. Maybe
Okay.
we can dive in deeper on something else.
Dissect. I like that. I could probably get 4 or 5 segments from you.
Okay.
There you go. All right, Lynn, we're going to say goodbye.
All right. Bye.
Bye.